The afternoon sun beats down on Amari and Zoe's lemonade stand, its handmade signs fluttering in the breeze. Ice clinks in a glass pitcher as Zoe arranges cups with careful precision. Amari wipes sweat from his brow, grinning at their $12.75 FIs earnings. Dr. Tiana Jackson watches from the porch, her smile tinged with vigilance. Across the street, Margaret Whitfield's shears snap at rose bushes, her movements sharp and deliberate. Her gaze flicks to the stand, lips pressed thin. A neighbor walking his dog pauses to buy lemonade, but Margaret's stare lingers, a silent judgment that stiffens Dr. Jackson's posture. Amari waves at a passing cyclist. Ice-cold lemonade. His voice cracks with hopeful enthusiasm. Zoe adds, $2! The cyclist hesitates, glancing at Margaret, then pedals away. Dr. Jackson's knuckles whiten on the porch rail. Margaret sets down her shears, brushing dirt from her gloves. She adjusts her sun hat, the motion overly precise, and crosses the street. Zoe freezes, a cup halfway to a customer. Amari steps forward, shoulders squared like his mother taught him. "Lemonade's fresh," he says, voice steady. Margaret's eyes narrow at the handwritten menu. "No permit for this, I assume?" Her tone is light, almost pleasant, but her fingers tap the stand's edge, a rhythm like a ticking clock. Dr. Jackson descends the steps, her sandals whispering against concrete. "It's a neighborhood tradition, Margaret. Remember Tommy's car wash last summer?" Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. Margaret's laugh is a dry leaf crunching underfoot. "Rules exist for a reason, Tiana." She pulls out her phone, thumb hovering over the screen. The stand's banner flaps loudly in the sudden stillness. A car door slams nearby. A teenager, earbuds dangling, films discreetly from a driveway. The lemonade pitcher sweats onto the table, a small puddle spreading like a stain. Dr. Jackson touches Amari's shoulder, her voice low. "Go inside, baby. Get more napkins." He hesitates, then obeys. Zoe stares at her shoes, a cup trembling in her hand. Margaret's phone rings, the tone shrill, urgent. She answers, turning her back. "Yes, I'd like to report." The camera lingers on the abandoned shears, petals scattered at their base. Somewhere, a lawnmower starts. Before the story continues, please let us know from where you are watching this video. Write your city or country in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like if you believe in stories that challenge injustice. Your engagement gives power to voices that need to be heard. Margaret's heels click sharply against the pavement as she strides toward the lemonade stand, her floral blouse starched and immaculate. Amari straightens the napkin dispenser, avoiding her gaze. Zoe's fingers fumble with a stack of cups, their clatter breaking the thick silence. Dr. Jackson steps off the porch, her sandals silent on the grass. "Permits," Margaret says. Not a question, but an accusation. She taps the stand's edge with a manicured nail. "You know the rules." Amari swallows, his throat dry. "We didn't know." Dr. Jackson's hand rests lightly on his shoulder. "It's a children's stand, Margaret. Tommy's car. Wash didn't need permits last year." Her voice is calm, but her eyes track Margaret's twitching fingers. Margaret's laugh is a short, brittle sound. "Tommy's was a school fundraiser." She emphasizes the last words, her chin lifting. Zoe shrinks behind her brother, a cup slipping from her grip. It rolls toward Margaret's feet, liquid pooling on the sidewalk. "Careful," Margaret murmurs, stepping back as if the spill might stain her. She pulls her phone from her purse, the case gleaming like a weapon. Dr. Jackson's jaw tightens, but she kneels to wipe the mess, her movements deliberate. Amari's voice cracks. "We're just trying to help save for a bike." Margaret's thumb hovers over her screen. "Rules protect everyone," she says, not looking up. Across the street, Mr. Green pauses his gardening, leaning heavily on his rake. A curtain twitches. In Mrs. Alvarez's window, the neighborhood holds its breath. Dr. Jackson rises, napkin damp in her fist. You've made your point. Her tone is steady, but the napkin crumples in her palm. Margaret's finger taps the call button. The dial tone buzzes, loud and invasive. Zoe tugs Amari's sleeve. Is she calling the police? Her whisper carries. Margaret's gaze flicks to the children, a muscle jumping in her cheek. This isn't personal, she says to the air between them. Dr. Jackson steps closer, her shadow crossing Margaret's. Isn't it? The question hangs, sharp and unflinching. Somewhere a dog barks. The teenager's camera zooms in, capturing Margaret's stiffened posture, the lemonade dripping off the table's edge. The sharp ring of Margaret's phone cuts through the quiet street. She holds the device tightly, voice low but firm. Yes, I'd like to report an unauthorized business on my street, she says, eyes flicking to the lemonade stand where Amari and Zoe freeze. Amari's hands tighten around the table edge, his breath shallow. Zoe's eyes dart between her mother and Margaret, confusion and fear mingling. Dr. Jackson steps forward, her voice steady but soft. Margaret, this isn't necessary. Margaret's lips press into a thin line. Rules are rules, Tiana. This isn't about you. A neighbor peeks from behind a curtain, the tension palpable. The distant hum of a lawnmower fades as the street holds its breath. Dr. Jackson kneels beside Zoe, whispering reassurance. We're not doing anything wrong. Margaret's gaze hardens, but a flicker of doubt crosses her face as a teenager. Across the street raises a phone, recording silently. The red recording light pulses steadily, a quiet witness. The sound of approaching sirens grows louder, neighbors gathering at windows, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. Margaret turns away, phone still pressed to her ear, unaware of the storm her call has ignited. The lemonade pitcher sweats on the table, droplets pooling like silent tears. Amari looks to his mother, eyes wide but resolute. Dr. Jackson's voice breaks the heavy air. We'll face this together. The camera lingers on the abandoned shears at Margaret's feet, petals scattered, a symbol of a fragile order beginning to crack. The afternoon sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the street. The tension thickens, but the Jacksons stand firm, their quiet strength a stark contrast to the brewing storm. The neighborhood watches, caught between old fears and new hope. The first crack in the facade has appeared, and nothing will be the same. A soft breeze stirs the scattered petals, a subtle reminder that change is in motion. The camera pulls back slowly, capturing the stand, the family, and the street. A tableau of resilience and quiet defiance. The call has been made, the first ripple in a growing wave. A distant wail of sirens grows steadily louder, slicing through the sticky afternoon air. The lemonade stand stands deserted for a moment as Zoe clings to Dr. Jackson's side, her small hand gripping tightly. Amari stands tall, jaw set, his gaze unwavering as the patrol car slows to a stop at the curb. Curtains flutter in windows up and down the block. Faces appear, some anxious, others curious, a few with tight-lipped concern. Margaret stands apart, arms folded, her chin raised as if bracing for vindication. The officer steps out, her badge catching the sunlight, but her expression is calm, almost gentle. Dr. Jackson meets the officer's eyes. We're just selling lemonade, officer, she says, voice even. The officer nods, glancing at the children, and then at Margaret, who shifts her weight from foot to foot, a bead of sweat tracing her hairline. Neighbors watch, the tension thick as honey. Mr. Green leans on his porch railing, a frown etched deep. Mrs. Alvarez hugs her daughter close, whispering in Spanish. The air is heavy. The only sound is the faint hum of the patrol car's engine. The officer kneels to Zoe's level, her tone soft. You made this lemonade yourself? Zoe nods, eyes wide. It's really good, the officer says, accepting a cup with a small reassuring smile. Margaret's jaw clenches, her certainty flickering. A hush settles as the officer stands, addressing the group. No laws broken here, just kids being kids. The words ripple through the crowd, relief and something like pride blooming on the Jacksons' faces. Margaret steps back, her authority shrinking. The neighbors exchange glances. Some nod, a few offer tentative smiles. The line has been drawn not by confrontation, but by quiet solidarity. The sirens fade, replaced by the soft clink of ice in lemonade glasses. The stand remains, a symbol of resistance and community. The stillness is heavy, but it's no longer fear. It's the calm before a new beginning. The patrol car pulls away, leaving a hush in its wake. Across the street, Liam, the teenager with the phone, lowers his arm, thumb pausing over the upload button. The red recording light fades, but its impact lingers. He glances at the Jacksons, then at Margaret, who stands rigid, arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the lemonade stand. Amari watches Liam, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Zoe tugs her mother's sleeve. "Why did she call them, Mama?" Dr. Jackson kneels, brushing a curl from Zoe's forehead. "Sometimes people are afraid of what they don't understand," she says quietly, her words carrying farther than she intends. Margaret turns, catching the stars of neighbors clustered at their doors. Her shoulders stiffen, but her confidence wavers as whispers ripple through the crowd. Mrs. Alvarez shakes her head, murmuring to her husband, "It's always the same story." Liam's phone vibrates, a notification, "Video uploaded." He hesitates, then pockets the device, the weight of what he's done settling in. The video's thumbnail shows Margaret's pointed finger, the children's wary faces, the officer's gentle crouch. It's raw, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. Inside, Dr. Jackson pours lemonade for Amari and Zoe, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. "We did nothing wrong," she assures them, voice firm. Amari nods, determination hardening his features. Margaret lingers at the curb, her authority eroding with each passing glance. The neighborhood's mood has shifted, no longer silent but watchful, waiting. The red light may be gone, but its spark has caught. As dusk settles, phones buzz throughout the block. The video spreads, first among neighbors, then beyond. The Jacksons' stand, once a quiet act of childhood, is now the center of a storm. Liam stands at his window, watching the street glow in the fading light. The promise of reckoning hangs in the air, silent but unstoppable. The next morning, Dr. Jackson sits at the kitchen table, laptop open, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. She scrolls through her inbox, eyes narrowing as she finds a forwarded message from a neighbor. The subject line reads, "FYI, HOA complaint records." Her heart pounds as she clicks. A spreadsheet opens, columns of names and dates stretching. Across the screen, Dr. Jackson's finger traces the rows. Margaret's name appears again and again, each entry marked unauthorized activity or maintain standards. She recognizes the pattern. Every family listed is Black, Latino, or Asian. The words are clinical, but the intent is unmistakable. She calls Amari over. "Look at this," she says, voice tight. He leans in, brow furrowed. "Why only us?" he asks. Dr. Jackson shakes her head, anger simmering beneath her calm. "It's not just us. It's everyone who looks like us." Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez receives a similar email. She sits at her kitchen counter, lips pressed thin, recalling the day her daughter's garage sale was shut down for disturbing the peace. She forwards the message to Dr. Jackson with a note. "We need to talk." Margaret stands at her window, watching the neighborhood come alive with quiet conversations. She senses the shift, but clings to her routines, watering the roses, straightening. The mail. Her phone buzzes with a new message, but she ignores it, unwilling to face what's coming. Dr. Jackson prints the emails, stacking them neatly in a folder. She pauses, hand trembling, then picks up her phone. "It's time," she murmurs, dialing Mrs. Alvarez. The camera lingers on the stack of papers, the evidence of years of quiet targeting. The neighborhood's wounds, once hidden, are now exposed. Each line a ghost. Each name a story waiting to be told. Mr. Green stands on his porch, the morning sun catching the silver in his hair. He holds a worn envelope, edges softened by years of handling. Dr. Jackson approaches, her steps slow, sensing the weight in his posture. He offers a tight nod, extending the envelope with a trembling hand. 20 years, he says, voice rough. 20 years of notes on my door. Grass too high. Kids are too loud. Never a name, just warnings. He looks away, jaw clenched. I tried to ignore it, but it wears you down. Dr. Jackson opens the letter, reading lines written in careful script. I resign from the neighborhood committee. I can't fight shadows anymore. She looks up, eyes shining. You shouldn't have had to. Mr. Green laughs, the sound brittle. They always said it was just about keeping things nice, but it was never about lawns. He glances at Margaret's house, his gaze hardening. I see her watching, always watching. Mrs. Alvarez joins them, her arms crossed, a quiet fury in her stance. She did it to us too. Said our music was disruptive. Mr. Green nods, the three forming a small circle of solidarity. A car passes, the driver waving. Mr. Green's hand lifts in response, the motion slow, deliberate. I'm tired, he admits, voice barely, above a whisper. But maybe it's time someone else spoke up. Dr. Jackson folds the letter, slipping it back into the envelope. We will, she promises. We'll make sure they hear us. Mr. Green's eyes soften, gratitude flickering. Don't let them make you small, he says, the words heavy with memory. The group stands together, a quiet force against years of exclusion. The camera lingers on the envelope, a symbol of battles fought in silence, and the hope that comes with finally being seen. The squad car idles at the curb, engine humming. Officer Elena Ruiz steps out, sunglasses slipping down her nose as she surveys the scene. Margaret stands rigid, arms folded, chin lifted in expectation. Amari and Zoe huddle behind their stand, eyes wide. Dr. Jackson's stance is steady, but her jaw is set. Officer Ruiz approaches, her steps unhurried. She glances at the lemonade sign, at the children's hopeful faces, then at Margaret's impatient posture. What seems to be the issue? She asks, voice calm. Margaret gestures sharply. They're operating a business without approval. It's against the rules. Her words are clipped, her gaze never leaving Officer Ruiz's badge. Officer Ruiz nods, then crouches to Zoe's height. Did you make this lemonade yourself? Zoe nods, her voice barely a whisper. With my brother. Amari shifts, standing a little taller. Dr. Jackson speaks quietly. We do this every summer. It's just for fun, officer. Officer Ruiz offers a gentle smile, her tone softening. Looks like you worked hard. She accepts a cup, takes a sip, and nods approvingly. Best I've had all week. Margaret's face flushes, her fingers tightening around her phone. Are you going to do something or not? Officer Ruiz stands, meeting Margaret's eyes. No laws broken here. Ma'am, just kids being kids. She turns to Dr. Jackson, her voice lower. If anyone gives you trouble, you let me know. A neighbor across the street exhales, relief visible in the slump of his shoulders. Mrs. Alvarez waves from her porch, a small smile breaking through. Margaret's confidence falters, her authority slipping as Officer Ruiz walks back to her car. The children beam, pride returning to their faces. Officer Ruiz pauses at her door, glancing back. Keep up the good work, kids. The patrol car drives away, leaving Margaret standing alone, her complaint dismissed, her power diminished. The neighborhood breathes easier, the tension broken not by confrontation, but by a simple act of empathy. Liam leans against his front steps, phone raised, the faint red recording icon glowing in the corner of the screen. He barely blinks as he captures Margaret's rigid stance, Officer Ruiz's gentle crouch, and the Jackson kids' anxious faces. His hands tremble, but he keeps the camera steady, determined not to miss a moment. Margaret's voice, sharp and insistent, carries across the lawn. "You're setting a precedent," she says, her words clipped. Liam zooms in, catching the tightness in her jaw, the way her fingers drum against her purse. He pans to Dr. Jackson, whose eyes flick toward the camera for a split second. An unspoken acknowledgement. The officer's tone is calm, even warm. "Nothing illegal here," she repeats, her gaze softening as she addresses Zoe and Amari. Liam's lens lingers on Zoe's small, nervous smile, the way Amari stands a little taller after the officer's words. A neighbor walks by, glancing at Liam's phone. "You getting this?" she whispers, her voice a mix of hope and disbelief. Liam nods, swallowing hard. "Someone needs to," he replies, barely audible. Margaret turns, catching sight of the phone. Her expression flickers, annoyance, then something closer to worry. She smooths her blouse, straightens her posture, but the camera doesn't flinch. "Officer." Ruiz heads back to her car, waving at the Jacksons. The crowd begins to disperse, but Liam keeps filming, capturing the subtle shift in the neighborhood's atmosphere. Conversations start in low voices, glances exchanged over hedges. The red light on his phone blinks steadily, a silent witness to the moment. Back inside, Liam uploads the footage, his heart pounding. He hesitates, then adds the caption, "Lemonade Justice." He hits post, the video already gathering views. Before he sets the phone down, outside, the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the street. The camera's work is done, but its impact is just beginning. Marcus Lee sits hunched over his cluttered desk, the blue glow of his laptop reflecting off stacks of dog-eared notes and half-drained coffee cups. His eyes move quickly from the spreadsheet on his screen to the notebook in his lap, pen tapping a restless beat. He scrolls through the HOA complaint files, each entry a pinprick in a growing pattern. Names, dates, addresses. Every complaint, he realizes, is aimed at families with brown or black skin. He mutters, "This isn't a coincidence." His fingers pause above the keyboard, then start cross-referencing addresses with census data. The pattern sharpens. Margaret's name appears again and again, always attached to phrases like "unauthorized activity" or "maintain standards." Marcus underlines the word "systemic" in his notebook, the ink pressed deep. His phone buzzes. A text from his editor. "Is this story as big as you think?" Marcus replies, "It's bigger." He looks out the window, seeing the neighborhood in a new light. Porches where children's laughter once rang now seem heavy with unspoken rules. A neighbor walks past his window, glancing up, sensing the tension. Marcus leans back, rubbing, his eyes, the weight of the story settling in his chest. He remembers his own childhood, his mother's warnings, his father's quiet pride. He feels the old ache of being told to stay quiet, don't draw attention. He dials a source, voice low. "Do you ever get a warning about your lawn?" The answer comes quickly, only after we moved in. Marcus writes it down, his resolve hardening. He knows this story will stir up more than just old grievances. It will force the neighborhood to look at itself. He snaps a photo of the spreadsheet, attaches it to an email, and types, "This isn't about lemonade. It's about who gets to belong." He hits send, the cursor blinking in the dark. The camera lingers on Marcus's determined face, the screen aglow with evidence, the first step toward exposing the truth. Carlos Alvarez stands in his modest kitchen, the scent of cinnamon and sugar lingering from the day's bake sale. His hands tremble slightly as he recalls the moment the HOA official arrived, folder in hand, eyes scanning the table laden with homemade cookies and brownies. "Unlicensed sale," the official had said, voice flat, eyes cold. Carlos's daughter, Maria, had looked up, confused and hurt mingling in her gaze. "But it's just for school," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Carlos clenched his jaw, swallowing the rising anger. "We followed every rule," he had said quietly, but the official's expression didn't soften. The sale was shut down, the treats packed away, dreams folded like the napkins left untouched. Now, at a neighborhood block party, Carlos shares the story with a small group. His voice is low but steady, the weight of years pressing in. Neighbors exchange glances, some nodding, others shaking their heads in silent agreement. Margaret Whitfield's name is spoken in hushed tones, a shadow over the gathering. A mother wipes a tear from her cheek. A father's fist tightens around a plastic cup. The pattern is clear. Exclusion wrapped in rules, bias hidden behind polite smiles. Carlos's eyes meet Dr. Jackson's across the crowd. No words are needed. The quiet rage they share is a bond forged in shared struggle. The camera lingers on. The block party scene, laughter mingled with whispered stories, the simmering tension beneath the surface. The bake sale memory is more than a moment. It's a symbol of the neighborhood's fractured soul, waiting for healing. The sun dips low, casting long shadows over the gathering. Children play nearby, their laughter a fragile counterpoint to the heavy stories shared. Carlos's voice softens as he recalls the hope in Maria's eyes before the sale was shut down. She wanted to help, he says, voice thick, to be part of something bigger. A neighbor nods, her eyes glistening. We've all felt it, the weight of being watched, judged. The group falls quiet, the unspoken truth hanging between them. The bake sale is more than a memory. It's a wound that refuses to heal, a quiet testament to the barriers still standing. The first light of dawn filters through Liam's bedroom window as his phone buzzes relentlessly. Notifications flood in. Likes, shares, comments, each one a spark, feeding the growing fire of Yao's lemonade justice. The video he captured the day before has exploded beyond the quiet street, reaching screens across the city and beyond. In the kitchen, Dr. Jackson reads aloud messages from strangers, recipes, donations, words of encouragement. Amari and Zoe listen, eyes wide with disbelief and hope. The weight of the neighborhood's silence begins to lift, replaced by a chorus of support that feels both new and powerful. Neighbors who once averted their eyes now stop by the stand, some with cash in hand, others with notes of apology tucked into envelopes. Mrs. Alvarez smiles warmly, handing over a jar of homemade jam. Mr. Green nods in quiet solidarity, his presence a steady anchor. Margaret Whitfield watches from her porch, the news playing on her television. Her lips press into a thin line, the tight smile fading as the reality of the viral storm settles in. Calls from former allies go unanswered. The neighborhood's tide has turned. Liam's phone glows in the dim light, the red recording icon a reminder of the moment that sparked change. He exhales slowly, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Outside, the street hums with renewed life, the shadows receding. The camera lingers on the lemonade stand, now a beacon of resilience and quiet defiance. The hashtag is more than a trend. It's a movement, a promise that the neighborhood's story is no longer hidden in the dark. A cool breeze stirs the morning air as Dr. Jackson retrieves the mail, her fingers brushing against a small, unmarked envelope wedged between bills. She pauses, heart thudding, and opens it. Inside is a single sheet of paper. Handwritten, the letters careful but unadorned. We're with you. We see you. She stands on the porch, the message trembling in her grasp. Amari peers over her shoulder, brow furrowing. Who sent it? He asks. Dr. Jackson shakes her head, a faint smile flickering across her lips. Someone who understands, she replies, voice soft. Throughout the day, more notes appear, tucked under the lemonade stand, slipped into the mailbox, taped to the front door. Some are simple. Thank you. Others longer, sharing stories of exclusion and quiet hope. A $20 bill is folded inside one, a gesture of solidarity more powerful than words. Neighbors who once kept their distance now offer shy waves or nods of encouragement. Mrs. Alvarez leaves a basket of oranges on the porch, a silent offering. Mr. Green passes by, tipping his hat, his eyes shining with unspoken pride. Margaret watches from behind her curtains, the lines on her face deepening. She sees the stream of support, the way the Jacksons' home has become a gathering place. Her phone rings, but she lets it go unanswered, the isolation settling in. Dr. Jackson collects the notes in a glass jar, each one a testament to the shifting tides. She reads them aloud to Amari and Zoe at dinner, their faces lighting up with each word. "We're not alone," Zoe whispers, hope blooming in her voice. As dusk falls, the jar sits on the windowsill, glowing in the golden light. The camera lingers on it, a symbol of quiet revolution, of a community finding its voice, one message at a time. The block party hums with a new energy, the air thick with anticipation and quiet defiance. Neighbors gather in clusters, their conversations low but charged. The usual chatter is punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter, a fragile joy threading through the tension. Margaret Whitfield stands alone near the edge of the crowd, her arms crossed tightly, lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes dart around, searching for support that no longer comes. The weight of isolation settles on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. She shifts uncomfortably, the fabric of her blouse rustling softly, a subtle sign of her unraveling composure. Amari and Zoe move through the crowd, their lemonade stand now a beacon of resilience. Neighbors approach, some with hesitant smiles, others with open admiration. A young mother offers a nod of respect, her eyes shining with unshed tears. A father claps Amari on the back, whispering, "You did good, kid." A teenager sets up a speaker, the viral video playing softly, its raw footage a reminder of the neighborhood's reckoning. The crowd's murmurs grow louder, whispers turning into roars of solidarity. The divide that once silenced voices now amplifies them. Mrs. Alvarez stands beside Mr. Green, their hands clasped tightly. "We've waited too long," she says, her voice steady but fierce. Mr. Green nods, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "This is just the beginning." Margaret's gaze falters as she watches the unity forming, the old order crumbling. She takes a step back, swallowed by the shifting tides. Her breath catches, a fleeting glance toward the lemonade stand, now glowing, warmly under the string lights. The camera pans over the crowd, faces of all ages and colors, united in purpose. Children dart between adults, their laughter a bright thread weaving through the gathering. The lemonade stand glows under the string lights, a symbol of hope and change. The block party, once a backdrop of quiet exclusion, now pulses with the heartbeat of a community reborn. The night air carries the scent of blooming flowers and fresh beginnings, a promise whispered on the breeze. Morning sunlight spills across the kitchen table as Dr. Jackson sorts through the mail, her hands pausing on a crisp official envelope. She calls Amari and Zoe over, her voice trembling with anticipation. Amari tears it open, his fingers careful, Zoe peering over his shoulder. Inside, a letter with the city's seal, an invitation for them to speak at the upcoming council meeting on youth entrepreneurship. Amari's eyes widened. "They want us to talk?" he whispers, disbelief and pride mingling in his tone. Zoe grins, bouncing on her toes. "We get to tell our story?" Dr. Jackson nods, her own smile breaking through, the fatigue of recent days. "You've earned it," she says, voice thick with emotion. Margaret, watching from her window, catches sight of the family's celebration. Her jaw tightens, fingers curling around her coffee mug. The invitation is a public acknowledgement of the Jacksons' dignity and resilience, an honor that passes her by completely. At school, Amari's teacher announces the news to the class. A ripple of applause follows, classmates offering high fives and shy congratulations. Zoe's friends gather around her at recess, asking what she'll say. "I'm going to talk about being brave," she replies, her voice stronger than ever. Mrs. Alvarez and Mr. Green stop by the stand that afternoon, offering hugs and words of encouragement. "You're making history," Mrs. Alvarez whispers, pride shining in her eyes. Mr. Green presses the letter back into Amari's hand. "Let them hear you." That evening, Dr. Jackson frames the invitation, placing it on the mantel next to family photos. She sits quietly, remembering her own father's advice. Let the truth speak. Even when it shakes, the weight of the moment settles in, heavy and hopeful. As dusk falls, the camera lingers on the framed letter, the city's seal gleaming in the soft light, a symbol of recognition, a door opening, and a community finally listening. The HOA meeting. Room feels colder than usual. The usual hum of chatter replaced by a heavy stillness. Margaret steps inside, her eyes scanning the room for familiar faces, but the seats she once commanded are filled with strangers. The air is thick with unspoken judgment. Board members avoid her gaze, shuffling papers and exchanging furtive glances. Mrs. Alvarez, now seated prominently, offers a small, resolute nod to Dr. Jackson, who returns it with quiet strength. The weight of change presses down on Margaret's shoulders. The chair calls the meeting to order, voice steady but firm. "We will review complaint procedures," she announces, eyes briefly flicking to Margaret. The words hang in the air like a verdict. Margaret's fingers tighten around the gavel, her knuckles whitening. She lifts it, but the weight feels different, heavier, unfamiliar. Her allies sit silently, their support waning, eyes fixed on the floor or the clock. A board member clears his throat, breaking the tension. "It's time to move forward," he says, voice low but clear. The room nods in agreement, the momentum undeniable. Margaret's grip falters, the gavel slipping from her hand with a soft thud. The sound echoes, a symbol of her fading influence. She looks up, meeting Dr. Jackson's calm eyes, and for a moment, the old power dynamic shatters. The meeting continues without her input, decisions made that signal a new era. Margaret rises slowly, the weight of isolation settling in. Her footsteps echo hollowly as she exits, the door closing softly behind her. Outside, reporters wait, but she slips past, avoiding questions. The neighborhood watches, the balance of power irrevocably shifted. The camera lingers on the empty chair, the gavel resting on the table, a silent testament to a legacy undone. Margaret's breath catches as she passes familiar faces turned away. The weight of years spent enforcing invisible lines now feels like chains. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, is swallowed by the room's cold air. A young board member exchanges a glance with Mrs. Alvarez, a silent pact forming. Dr. Jackson watches quietly, her expression unreadable but resolute. The morning is bright, the sidewalk alive with anticipation, as Amari and Zoe set up their new lemonade stand. Fresh paint gleams on the wooden planks, yellow and sky blue, the colors of hope. A laminated city permit hangs proudly from the front, its official, seal catching the sun. Dr. Jackson kneels beside her children, adjusting the sign with careful hands. "You did this," she whispers, pride softening her voice. Neighbors gather, some with folding chairs, others with homemade banners that read, "Welcome back" and "Community First." Mrs. Alvarez brings a tray of cookies, placing them beside the pitcher. Mr. Green stands nearby, his cane tapping a gentle rhythm on the pavement. "Never thought I'd see the day," he murmurs, smiling at Amari. A city official arrives, microphone in hand. She clears her throat, her voice carrying over the assembled crowd. "Today, we celebrate youth entrepreneurship and the power of community." The microphone is passed to Zoe, her hands trembling as she speaks. "Thank you for believing in us," she says, her words met with applause. Amari pours the first glass, handing it to a neighbor who once looked away. The gesture is met with a nod, a small, meaningful truce. More people step forward, coins and bills filling the tip jar. The sound of laughter mingles with the clink of ice in glasses. Margaret watches from her window, her face pale behind the glass. The scene outside is vibrant, joyful, a world she no longer commands. Her phone buzzes with messages she doesn't answer. The distance between her and the street feels insurmountable. Dr. Jackson stands back, arms folded, a quiet satisfaction in her eyes. The stand, once a target, is now a symbol. The camera lingers on the city permit, the microphone, and the children's bright smiles. proof that dignity, once challenged, can be rebuilt stronger than before. The town hall buzzes with uneasy energy as neighbors file in, avoiding Margaret's gaze. Dr. Jackson sits front row, posture steady, children flanking her. Margaret adjusts her blazer, expecting support, but the room's quiet tension is a wall. The gavel strikes, a sound that cracks the illusion of control. Marcus. Lee's presentation flashes on screen. Charts of Margaret's complaints, all against families of color. The room inhales collectively. Margaret's knuckles whiten as the data pulses. Dates, addresses, coded language. A neighbor mutters, "She did this to us too." She whispers a spark in dry tinder. Amari stands, mic trembling in his hands. "We followed every rule," he says, eyes locked on Margaret. The room stills. Zoe squeezes his arm, her nod steadying him. Margaret's pen slips, rolling off the table, a small symbolic fall. The truth, spoken by a child, hangs unanswerable. Mrs. Alvarez rises, voice shaking. "You shut down my daughter's quinceañera fundraiser. Called it a disturbance." Others nod. Black, Latino, Asian neighbors, their shared glances weaving a net around Margaret. She shrinks into her seat, the weight of their stares eroding her defiance. Margaret grabs the mic. "I was protecting our community." Her voice cracks, the feedback screeching. She cites HOA bylaws, but the words sound hollow. A board member's sigh cuts through. Dr. Jackson's calm contrast, leaning back, fingers laced, exposes Margaret's desperation. The system's mask slips. The chair calls for a censure vote. Hands rise slowly at first, then in waves. Margaret's allies study their shoes. The gavel falls, her authority revoked. She grips her chair, the wood creaking under her weight. The room exhales, the air lighter, freer. Margaret walks out alone, heels echoing in the sudden quiet. The doors swing shut behind her. Outside, reporters swarm, but she veers into shadows. A teen films her retreat, the clip titled, "The Walk of Shame." Her power, once loud, dissolves with every step. The room dims as the projector flickers. To life, casting a pale glow over the gathered neighbors and board members. Marcus Lee stands at the front, remote in hand, his voice steady but charged. "Here are the records," he says, clicking through slides filled with dates, addresses, and complaint summaries. The screen reveals a pattern. Every complaint linked. To Margaret Whitfield targets families of color. The words "unauthorized activity" and "maintain standards" repeat like a haunting refrain. The crowd leans in. Breaths held, the weight of the evidence settling like dust in the air. Margaret's fingers twitch, her knuckles whitening as she grips the armrest. Her eyes dart to the screen, then to the faces around her. Neighbors whose quiet nods and exchanged glances speak volumes. A woman whispers, "She did this to us too," her voice barely audible but sharp enough to cut through the tension. Amari stands beside his mother, clutching the microphone with trembling hands. "We followed every rule," he says, voice clear despite the tremor. Zoe squeezes his arm, her steady nod a silent anchor. Margaret's pen slips from her grasp, rolling off the table with a soft thud, a small but telling fall. The room holds, its breath, the truth laid bare in stark black and white. Mrs. Alvarez rises, voice shaking but resolute. "You shut down my daughter's quinceañera fundraiser," she says, eyes locked on Margaret. "Called it a disturbance." Others join, their stories weaving a tapestry of exclusion. Black, Latino, Asian neighbors united in quiet defiance. Margaret shrinks into her seat, the weight of their collective gaze eroding her once unshakable confidence. Margaret grabs the microphone, voice cracking. "I was protecting our community." The feedback screeches, a harsh reminder of her faltering grip. She cites HOA bylaws, but the words fall flat, hollow echoes in a room ready for change. A board member sighs, breaking the tension. Dr. Jackson leans back, fingers laced, her calm presence a stark contrast to Margaret's unraveling. Chair calls for a vote. Hands rise slowly, then in waves. Margaret's allies avoid eye contact, their support waning. The gavel falls with a decisive thud, her authority revoked. She grips her chair, the wood creaking under her weight. The room exhales, the air lighter, freer. Margaret rises, heels clicking sharply as she exits alone. The doors close softly behind her, the sound a quiet punctuation to a crumbling rain. Outside, a teenager films her retreat, the clip titled, "The Walk of Shame." Her power, once loud, dissolves with every step. The room remains, a space transformed, ready to rebuild, to heal, to rise. Amari stands at the podium, the microphone trembling slightly in his grasp. His eyes lock onto Margaret, unwavering despite the weight of the room's gaze. "We followed every rule," he says, voice steady but soft, the words carrying a quiet power. Zoe, standing beside him, squeezes his arm, her nod a silent show of support. Margaret's hand twitches, her pen slipping from her fingers and rolling off the table with a soft thud. The sound echoes in the hushed room, a subtle but telling sign of her faltering control. The neighbors watch, breaths held, as the truth spoken by a child hangs heavy in the air. Mrs. Alvarez rises, her voice shaking but resolute. "You shut down my daughter's quinceañera fundraiser," she says, eyes fixed on Margaret. Others follow, their stories weaving a tapestry of exclusion and resilience. Black, Latino, and Asian neighbors share their experiences, their collective gaze forming an unspoken bond. Margaret shrinks into her seat, the weight of their stares eroding her defiance. Her lips press into a thin line, the tightness betraying her unraveling composure. She reaches for the microphone, her voice cracking as she tries to defend herself. "I was protecting our community!" The feedback screeches, cutting through the tension. A board member sighs, breaking the heavy quiet. Dr. Jackson leans back, fingers laced, her calm presence a stark contrast to Margaret's desperation. The room seems to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable shift. The chair calls for a vote. Hands rise slowly at first, then in waves. Margaret's allies avoid eye contact, their support waning. The gavel falls with a decisive thud, signaling the end of her authority. She grips her chair tightly, the wood creaking under her weight. As the room exhales, the air lighter and freer. Margaret rises, heels clicking sharply as she exits alone. The doors close softly behind her, the sound a quiet punctuation to a crumbling rain. Outside, a teenager films her retreat, the clip titled, "The Walk of Shame." Her power, once loud, dissolves with every step. The room remains, a space transformed, ready to rebuild, to heal, to rise. Mrs. Alvarez rises from her seat, her hands trembling but her voice clear. She faces the room, eyes sweeping over neighbors, who have gathered for years in this very hall, yet rarely spoken their truths. "You called my daughter's quinceañera a disturbance," she says, her words measured but loaded with years of quiet pain. "We cleaned up, we ended early, but it was never enough." A hush settles. Mr. Green nods slowly, his gaze fixed on Margaret. "My grandkids were told to keep it down every summer. No one else got those letters." His voice is gravelly, but each word lands with the weight of memory. A young couple, hands clasped tightly, exchange a glance before the husband speaks. "Our Halloween decorations were called unsightly. We took them down. Still, the warnings kept coming." Margaret's face flushes, her composure cracking. She tries to meet their eyes but falters, her hands twisting in her lap. The board members shift in their seats, discomfort etched on their faces. One clears his throat, another scribbles notes without looking up. Dr. Jackson sits quietly, her presence a steady anchor for the room. Zoe leans into her mother's side, drawing strength from her calm. Amari watches, his earlier words echoing in the charged air. Mrs. Alvarez's voice softens. "We stayed quiet because we thought it would protect us. But silence never brought respect. It just made us smaller." The room absorbs her confession. the collective realization settling in. Neighbors who once felt isolated now see themselves reflected in each other's stories. The old order, built on whispered warnings and unspoken exclusions, begins to crumble. Margaret's shoulders slump, her authority shrinking with every testimony. The chair glances at the clock, but no one moves to end the moment. For the first time, the hall feels honest, raw, vulnerable, and ready for change. The camera lingers on Mrs. Alvarez, her chin lifted, her voice finally heard. The silence is not empty now. It is full of possibility. The room is thick with tension as Margaret reaches for the microphone, her fingers trembling slightly. "I was protecting our community," she declares, voice cracking under the weight of the room's gaze. The microphone emits a sharp feedback, slicing through the heavy quiet. Board members exchange uneasy glances. One clears his throat, breaking the charged atmosphere. Margaret clutches the microphone tighter, her knuckles pale. She cites HOA bylaws, her voice wavering. These rules are in place to maintain order and safety. Dr. Jackson leans back in her chair, fingers interlaced calmly in her lap. Her steady presence contrasts sharply with Margaret's unraveling composure. The room watches, breaths held, as the mask of authority slips away. A young board member shifts in her seat, her eyes flickering with doubt. Another bites her lip, avoiding direct eye contact. The weight of years of unspoken truths presses down on the gathering. Margaret's voice falters, the feedback screeching again. She lowers the microphone slightly, her shoulders sagging. "I only wanted what's best for the neighborhood," she murmurs, the conviction draining from her tone. Dr. Jackson's gaze meets Margaret's briefly, unflinching, but without malice. "Protecting a community means embracing all its members," she replies softly, her words carrying the quiet power of truth. The room exhales collectively, the tension easing but the shift unmistakable. Margaret's defense has crumbled, replaced by a fragile vulnerability. The camera lingers on the microphone, now silent, a symbol of a voice once loud, but now diminished. The scene closes on the faces of neighbors, some hopeful, others resolute, ready for the change that is coming. The microphone's cord lies slack, a quiet reminder of the power that once pulsed through it. Margaret's breath catches, her eyes darting to the floor. A board member clears his throat again, the sound a soft punctuation. Whispers ripple through the room, some tentative, others firm. A woman near the back nods slowly, her expression resolute. Another shifts in her seat, fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on the table. Dr. Jackson rises, her voice calm but unwavering. "We're here to build, not to break, to include, not exclude." Her words settle over the room like a balm. Margaret's shoulders slump further, the fight draining from her posture. The room's energy shifts, the old guard's grip loosening. With every passing second, the chair's voice breaks the tension. "We'll proceed to a vote." The room holds a heavy breath. Hands begin to rise, slowly at first, hesitant, uncertain, then with growing confidence. Each raised hand is a quiet rebellion, a small but powerful act of change. The old order trembles as neighbors look around, gauging the shifting tide. Margaret's allies glance at each other, support draining from their faces. One board member avoids Margaret's eyes, fingers drumming a restless rhythm on the table. Another shifts in her seat, the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. The gavel rests on the table, its wood worn but sturdy, a symbol of authority now up for grabs. As more hands lift, Margaret's grip tightens on her chair, knuckles whitening. The sound of the gavel falling echoes like a final verdict, a punctuation to her fading authority. A young woman near the back exhales slowly, relief washing over her face. A man nods subtly, his eyes bright with hope. The room exhales collectively, the air lighter, freer, as if a storm has finally passed. Margaret's shoulders slump, the fight draining from her posture. She looks around, The faces once loyal now distant, their expressions unreadable. The power she wielded for so long feels like a fragile thread snapping quietly. Dr. Jackson watches from her seat, her expression calm but resolute, her fingers resting lightly on the table, a silent testament to the dignity that has carried her through every storm. The chair announces the vote's outcome, the words clear and firm. Margaret rises slowly, the weight of defeat heavy in her steps. Her heels click sharply against the floor, a stark contrast to the soft murmurs of the room. The doors close behind her with a soft thud, the sound marking the end of an era. Outside, a teenager films her retreat, the clip titled The Walk of Shame. Her power, once loud, dissolves with every step. The room remains, a space transformed, ready to rebuild, to heal, to rise. The hallway is silent except for the sharp click of Margaret's heels against the polished tile floor. Each step echoes, a metronome marking the end of her reign. Her shoulders slump, the weight of years spent enforcing invisible lines now pressing down like a physical burden. Board members avoid her gaze, their eyes flickering with a mix of relief and uncertainty. The gavel, once a symbol of her authority, lies forgotten on the table, its wood worn and cold. Margaret's breath catches as she reaches the exit, the door swinging shut softly behind her, a quiet punctuation to a crumbling legacy. Outside, reporters cluster, their cameras flashing, but Margaret slips past, her face a mask of resignation. A teenager's phone captures the moment, the clip quickly titled The Walk of Shame. The sound of her heels fades into the distance, swallowed by the murmurs of a neighborhood ready to move forward. Inside, the room exhales, the tension dissipating like mist. Dr. Jackson watches quietly, her expression unreadable but resolute. The old order has fallen, replaced by a fragile hope. The camera lingers on the empty chair, the gavel's echo still resonating in the walls. The legacy Margaret leaves behind is one of exclusion and quiet defeat, a stark contrast to the community's emerging unity. A soft breeze stirs the curtains, carrying with it the promise of change. The weight of silence fills the room as the last echoes of her footsteps fade. A board member quietly closes the meeting minutes, the final act of a chapter long overdue. Outside, the neighborhood breathes a collective sigh, the air lighter, the future uncertain but hopeful. Dr. Jackson's eyes meet those of a young board member, a silent promise passing between them. The community's story is no longer one of exclusion, but of resilience and renewal. The camera pulls back, capturing the empty hallway, the closed door, and the first rays of dawn breaking through the windows. A new day beginning. The morning sun filters through the kitchen window as Dr. Jackson carefully unfolds an official letter, its city seal gleaming softly in the light. Amari and Zoe gather around the table, eyes wide with anticipation. "They want us to speak," Amari whispers, disbelief and pride mingling in his voice. Zoe bounces on her toes, a bright smile spreading across her face. "We get to tell our story," she says, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Dr. Jackson nods, her own smile tinged with emotion. "You've earned this," she replies, her voice calm but full of pride. Across the street, Margaret watches from behind drawn curtains, her face pale and tight. The letter in Dr. Jackson's hands is a public acknowledgement of resilience and dignity, an honor that Margaret cannot claim. Her fingers twitch nervously, the weight of the neighborhood's shifting tides pressing down. At school, Amari's teacher announces the invitation to the class, sparking applause and quiet cheers. Zoe's friends gather around her, asking what she will say. "I'm going to talk about courage," she replies, her voice firm and clear. The classroom buzzes with a new energy, a sense of hope threading through the students. Later, Mrs. Alvarez and Mr. Green visit the lemonade stand, offering hugs and words of encouragement. "You're making history," Mrs. Alvarez whispers, her eyes shining with pride. Mr. Green presses the letter into Amari's hand. "Let them hear you," he says, his voice steady but filled with emotion. That evening, Dr. Jackson places the framed invitation on the mantel next to family photos. She sits quietly, recalling her father's advice. Let the truth speak, even when it shakes. The weight of the moment settles in, heavy but hopeful, a quiet promise of change. As dusk falls, the camera lingers on the framed letter. The city, seal glowing softly, a symbol of recognition, a door opening, and a community finally listening. The neighborhood's heartbeat quickens, the promise of a new chapter unfolding. The HOA meeting room feels different today, lighter, yet charged with a quiet energy of change. Margaret's usual seat remains empty, a stark symbol of the shifting power. Mrs. Alvarez sits confidently in her place, a binder of new policies resting on the table before her. The air hums softly with whispered conversations and hopeful glances. Board members exchanged nods, their faces reflecting a mix of relief and determination. The agenda's first item is clear: revising standards to celebrate diversity. Laughter bubbles quietly from a corner, a subtle but powerful sign of healing. Neighbors peek through windows, their smiles tentative but genuine. Children play. Nearby, their laughter weaving through the neighborhood like a fresh breeze. The community's heartbeat feels steady, a rhythm of inclusion replacing the old cadence of exclusion. Mrs. Alvarez stands to speak, her voice calm but resolute. "We're here to build bridges, not walls," she says, eyes sweeping the room. Her words settle over the gathering, a promise of transformation. A young board member flips through the binder, nodding in agreement. Another jots notes, her pen moving with purpose. The gavel feels lighter in new hands, its weight a symbol of responsibility embraced rather than wielded. Across the street, Dr. Jackson watches from her porch, a soft smile playing on her lips. The empty chair in the meeting room is a quiet victory, a testament to resilience and the power of community. The camera lingers on the binder's cover. Inclusive policies for a united neighborhood, before pulling back to capture the vibrant street, alive with color and hope. The new board rises, ready to write a chapter of justice and belonging. The lemonade stand buzzes with life, neighbors gathered in celebration. Amari pours the first glass, the liquid catching the sunlight like a promise. Zoe hands out cups, her smile bright and steady. The air hums with laughter and the clink of ice, a melody of renewal. Mrs. Alvarez watches from the sidelines, her eyes moist with pride. "Look at them," she whispers to Mr. Green, who nods, his cane tapping a gentle rhythm on the pavement. They've turned pain into power. Dr. Jackson stands nearby, arms crossed, her gaze soft but resolute. She watches the children, her heart swelling with quiet satisfaction. The stand, once a target of exclusion, now pulses with community. Spirit. Margaret Whitfield peers from her window, her face pale and drawn. The vibrant scene outside contrasts sharply with the isolation she feels. Her phone buzzes with unanswered messages, the weight of her defeat settling in. A city official steps forward, microphone in hand. "Today we celebrate resilience and unity," she announces, her voice carrying over the crowd. Zoe's hands tremble slightly as she accepts the mic. "Thank you for believing in us," she says, her voice steady despite the moment's gravity. Neighbors cheer, the sound rising, like a wave. Amari raises his glass in a silent toast, eyes meeting his mother's. The sweetness of the lemonade mirrors the victory they've earned. The camera lingers on the stand, the permits displayed proudly, the microphone resting beside the pitcher. The scene fades on the children's bright smiles, a testament to hope reclaimed and justice served. A young boy approaches, shy but determined, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. He offers it to Zoe, who accepts with a grateful smile. The gesture, simple yet profound, speaks volumes about the community's healing. Mrs. Peterson, an elderly neighbor, joins the crowd, her eyes shining with tears. She claps softly, her presence a quiet endorsement of the new neighborhood spirit. The sun dips lower, casting a warm glow over the scene. The laughter and chatter continue, a soundtrack of renewal and belonging. The lemonade stand, once a battleground, now stands as a beacon of hope. Margaret sits alone in a dim cafe, the low hum of conversation swirling around her like a distant storm. Her fingers trace the rim of a cold coffee cup, the condensation mirroring the chill settling deep within her chest. The glow of her phone screen casts fleeting shadows across her face, each notification a reminder of the unraveling she cannot escape. The barista approaches with a tentative smile, setting down a fresh cup. Margaret offers a tight nod, eyes avoiding the warm gaze. Around her, patrons glance sideways, their expressions a mix of curiosity and quiet judgment. A man at the counter shifts uncomfortably, his gaze flickering to the door as if expecting someone else. Outside, neighbors cross the street with deliberate steps, their paths curving away from the cafe's entrance. A woman with a stroller pauses, then veers onto a different block, her face unreadable but resolute. The neighborhood's embrace has withdrawn, leaving Margaret adrift in a sea of silent exclusion. Her phone buzzes again, HOA resignation requests, messages of disapproval, the digital chorus of a community turning its back. She swipes through the messages, each one a small fracture in the facade she once held so firmly. In a corner, a young couple whispers, their words muffled but heavy, with meaning. Margaret's eyes flicker toward them, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through the hardened exterior. She takes a slow breath, the weight of consequence pressing down like a physical force. The cafe's ambient noise swells, a clatter of dishes, a soft laugh, the rustle of newspapers. Margaret's gaze drifts to the window, where the afternoon light softens the edges of the street she once controlled. Her reflection stares back, a woman diminished but not yet defeated. The scene closes on the quiet tension, the unspoken story of power lost and isolation gained. Margaret's fingers tremble slightly as she sets the phone down, the weight of the community's rejection settling like a stone in her stomach. She glances around the cafe once more, noting the subtle shifts, the way conversations pause when she enters, the quick exchange of glances that speak volumes. The morning light filters softly through the kitchen window as Dr. Jackson reads aloud messages flooding her phone. Each notification carries warmth, recipes shared, donations pledged, words of encouragement from strangers moved by the story. Amari and Zoe sit nearby, their eyes wide with disbelief and hope, absorbing the sudden wave of support. Neighbors, who once averted their gaze, now approach the lemonade stand with smiles and open hands. Mrs. Alvarez places a jar of homemade jam beside the pitcher, her eyes shining with quiet pride. Mr. Green nods in solidarity, his presence steady and reassuring. Margaret Whitfield watches from her porch, the television casting flickering images of the viral story across her face. Her lips press into a thin line, the tight smile fading as the reality of the neighborhood's shift settles in. Calls from former allies go unanswered. The tide has turned. Liam's phone buzzes incessantly, the red recording light a reminder of the moment that sparked change. He exhales slowly, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Outside, the street hums with renewed life, the shadows receding. The camera lingers on the lemonade stand, now a beacon of resilience and quiet defiance. The hashtag #WaDodgeLemonadeJustice pulses across screens, a symbol of a community's awakening and the power of a single act to ignite a movement. The scene closes. On the Jackson family, their faces illuminated by the glow of their phones and the promise of a future shaped by courage and unity. The HOA boardroom feels different today, lighter yet charged with a quiet energy of change. Margaret's usual seat remains empty, a stark symbol of the shifting power. Mrs. Alvarez sits confidently in her place, a binder of new policies resting on the table before her. The air hums softly with whispered conversations and hopeful glances. Board members exchange nods, their faces reflecting a mix of relief and determination. The agenda's first item is clear: revising standards to celebrate diversity. Laughter bubbles quietly from a corner, a subtle but powerful sign of healing. Neighbors peek through windows, their smiles tentative but genuine. Children play, nearby, their laughter weaving through the neighborhood like a fresh breeze. The community's heartbeat feels steady, a rhythm of inclusion replacing the old cadence of exclusion. Mrs. Alvarez stands to speak, her voice calm but resolute. "We're here to build bridges, not walls," she says, eyes sweeping the room. Her words settle over the gathering, a promise of transformation. A young board member flips through the binder, nodding in agreement. Another jots notes, her pen moving with purpose. The gavel feels lighter in new hands, its weight a symbol of responsibility embraced rather than wielded. Across the street, Dr. Jackson watches from her porch, a soft smile playing on her lips. The empty chair in the meeting room is a quiet victory, a testament to resilience and the power of community. The camera lingers on the binder's cover, inclusive policies for a united neighborhood, before pulling back to capture the vibrant street, alive with color and hope. The new board rises, ready to write a chapter of justice and belonging. Dr. Jackson kneels in her backyard, hands deep in the soil, the scent of earth grounding her after weeks of upheaval. The garden, once a patch of neglected grass, now blooms with wildflowers and herbs, a tapestry of color and resilience. She gently presses seeds into the dirt, her movements slow and deliberate, each gesture a quiet act of hope. Amari and Zoe dart between rows of sunflowers, their laughter rising above the gentle hum of bees. Neighbors stroll by, pausing to admire the blossoms. Mrs. Peterson, who once kept her distance, leans over the fence to offer a compliment. "Your garden's beautiful, Tiana. It's good to see things growing again." Dr. Jackson smiles, gratitude softening the lines of fatigue on her face. Inside, the house buzzes with preparations for another busy day at the lemonade stand. Zoe arranges fresh-picked mint in a jar. Amari slices lemons with practiced care. The air is filled with the tang of citrus and the promise of new beginnings. Dr. Jackson's thoughts drift to her father's words, "Change doesn't roar. It starts with a whisper and grows." She glances at the garden, remembering the battles fought and the wounds healed, both in the soil and in the community. Across the street, Margaret's window remains shuttered, her presence a fading shadow. The neighborhood, once divided by suspicion, now feels connected by shared purpose. Children play freely, their voices a melody of belonging. As dusk falls, Dr. Jackson stands back to admire her work. The garden glows in the soft light, a living reminder that growth is possible, even after the harshest storms. She exhales, letting the peace settle in, knowing that real change is slow, steady, and rooted in care. The camera lingers on a single seedling pushing through the soil, fragile yet determined, a metaphor for the community's journey and the quiet power of resilience. The cafe is busy, sunlight spilling over polished tables and the low hum of conversation. Dr. Jackson steps inside, her presence drawing a few curious glances. The barista, a young woman with a bright scarf, greets her with a warm smile. "Lemonade, right? On the house today." Dr. Jackson's surprise flickers across her face before she nods in thanks. In the corner, Margaret sits alone, her coffee cooling untouched. The barista's demeanor shifts as she approaches, her tone neutral, polite, but distant. "Refill?" she asks, not waiting for an answer. Margaret nods, her eyes tracing the patterns in the tabletop, shoulders drawn tight. A couple at the window whispers, their conversation punctuated by glances at Dr. Jackson and then at Margaret. A man with a laptop offers Dr. Jackson a nod, a gesture of quiet respect. The cafe's energy feels different. Old boundaries have loosened, replaced by cautious openness. Dr. Jackson sips her lemonade, savoring the sweetness and the simple kindness behind it. She catches the barista's eye, offering a genuine smile. The barista beams back, pride flickering in her gaze. Small gestures, once rare, now ripple through the room. Margaret shifts in her seat, aware of the subtle shift in attention. The warmth that once followed her has cooled, replaced by a polite distance. She glances at Dr. Jackson, their eyes meeting for a brief, loaded moment before Margaret looks away. The bell above the door jingles as more neighbors enter, their greetings warmer, more inclusive. Dr. Jackson finishes her drink, leaving a generous tip. As she exits, the barista waves, her gesture a quiet affirmation of change. The camera lingers on Margaret, alone at her table, the cafe's new rhythm pulsing around her. Small acts, glances, nods, a cup of lemonade, mark the community's transformation, one interaction at a time. A stack of mail sits on the kitchen counter, most of it routine. Bills, flyers, a magazine, but one envelope stands out, its gold-embossed seal gleaming in the morning light. Zoe spots it first, her fingers trembling as she hands it to Amari. "It's for us," she says, excitement and disbelief mingling in her voice. Dr. Jackson gathers, the children around the table. Amari carefully opens the envelope, pulling out a letter on heavy paper. He reads aloud, his voice growing steadier with each word. "We are pleased to award you the Youth Entrepreneurship Scholarship for your leadership, resilience, and positive impact." Zoe's eyes widen, a gasp escaping her lips. Dr. Jackson's hand covers her mouth, tears welling up as pride and relief wash over her. The news spreads quickly. Neighbors stop by the lemonade stand, offering hugs and congratulations. Mrs. Alvarez brings a bouquet of sunflowers, her smile radiant. Mr. Green shakes Amari's hand, his grip firm. "You're going places, son," he says, voice thick with emotion. At school, Amari's teacher announces the scholarship to the class. Applause breaks out, classmates grinning and patting him on the back. Zoe's friends gather around, peppering her with questions. "How did you do it?" one asks. Zoe shrugs, her smile shy but proud. "We just didn't give up." Margaret hears the news from her living room, the sound of celebration drifting through her open window. She sits very still, the reality of her isolation settling in as the neighborhood's focus shifts to the Jacksons' achievement. That evening, Dr. Jackson frames the scholarship letter, placing it next to the city council invitation on the mantel. The camera lingers on the two documents, side by side, a testament to recognition earned not just by surviving, but by rising. The Jacksons gather for dinner, laughter, and hope filling the room. Their journey, once marked by exclusion, is now celebrated beyond their street. The morning light filters softly through the kitchen window as Dr. Jackson sorts through the mail. Among the usual envelopes, a handful of handwritten notes catch her eye. Each one carries a quiet weight, words of apology, regret, and hope from neighbors who once stood silent. She unfolds the first note carefully, the ink slightly smudged, but the message clear. "We're sorry for the pain caused. We see you and stand with you." Her fingers tremble slightly as she reads, a mix of relief and sorrow washing over her. Amari and Zoe gather around the kitchen table, their eyes wide with curiosity. Dr. Jackson reads aloud, her voice steady but soft, sharing the words of healing and accountability. Zoe's small hand reaches out, touching her mother's arm, a silent connection. Throughout the day, more notes arrive, tucked under the lemonade stand, slipped into mailboxes, left on doorsteps. Some carry small gifts, a jar of honey, a bouquet of wildflowers, a homemade card. Each gesture is a step toward mending the fractures that once divided the neighborhood. Mrs. Alvarez stops by, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It's a start," she says quietly, her voice thick with emotion. Mr. Green nods in agreement, his cane tapping a gentle rhythm on the porch floor. Margaret watches from her window, the lines on her face deepening. The notes, the gifts, the shifting tides, they all speak of a community awakening. Her phone buzzes with unanswered calls, the isolation settling in like a shadow. Dr. Jackson gathers the notes in a glass jar, placing it on the windowsill where the light catches the paper and ink. She looks out at the street, the faces of neighbors passing by, some offering nods and smiles. The jar glows softly, a symbol of healing and hope. As evening falls, the family sits together, the notes spread across the table. The camera lingers on Zoe's hopeful smile, Amari's steady gaze, and Dr. Jackson's quiet strength. The journey toward justice is slow, but these small acts mark a turning point, a community beginning to heal. The block party hums with a new energy, the air thick with anticipation and quiet defiance. Neighbors gather in clusters, their conversations low but charged. The usual chatter is punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter, a fragile joy, threading through the tension. Margaret Whitfield stands alone near the edge of the crowd, her arms crossed tightly, lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes darted around, searching for support that no longer comes. The weight of isolation settles on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. She shifts uncomfortably, the fabric of her blouse rustling softly, a subtle sign of her unraveling composure. Amari and Zoe move through the crowd, their lemonade standing now a beacon of resilience. Neighbors approach, some with hesitant smiles, others with open admiration. A young mother offers a nod of respect, her eyes shining with unshed tears. A father claps Amari on the back, whispering, "You did good, kid." A teenager sets up a speaker, the viral video, playing softly, its raw footage a reminder of the neighborhood's reckoning. The crowd's murmurs grow louder, whispers turning into roars of solidarity. The divide that once silenced voices now amplifies them. Mrs. Alvarez stands beside Mr. Green, their hands clasped tightly. "We've waited too long," she says, her voice steady but fierce. Mr. Green nods, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "This is just the beginning." Margaret's gaze falters as she watches the unity forming, the old order crumbling. She takes a step back, swallowed by the shifting tides. Her breath catches, a fleeting glance toward the lemonade stand, now glowing warmly under the string lights. The camera pans over the crowd, faces of all ages and colors, united in purpose. Children dart between adults, their laughter a bright thread weaving through the gathering. The lemonade stand glows under the string lights, a symbol of hope and change. The block party, once a backdrop of quiet exclusion, now pulses with the heartbeat of a community reborn. The night air carries the scent of blooming flowers and fresh beginnings, a promise whispered on the breeze.